So welcome to lecture number 29, ME210 Fluid Mechanics, and today we'll talk about a new chapter, a new topic called external flows. Okay, sometimes we also call it flow past immersed bodies. So let's talk about what exactly is this chapter going to contain. Let's first talk about the motivation. So let's take an example. So in this case, we have a car. So the car is moving to the left in this case, so we can assume that relative to the car there is a flow that happens from right to left. Okay, the car is moving with the velocity which is capital U in this case. Okay, so what we are interested as engineers here is to find out the net force acting on the car because of the air drag. So what is the drag force on the car in this case? Okay, that is the main aim of all the discussion that we're going to happen that we're going to do today or in the next few lectures on external flows. Okay, the flows that are happening outside an external outside a solid body, in this case a car, what sort of forces do those flows apply on the bodies is what is of interest in this case. So whatever we do is going to be oriented towards being able to find this drag force. Okay, so the drag force in this case is a sum of two kinds of drags. So one is called a pressure drag or a normal drag, and the other is called a shear drag. Okay, so this normal drag or the normal force, so let's call it the drag force. So drag is of two types, okay, normal and shear. Let's talk about these two kinds of drags. So this normal force is the force because of pressure. So if you have let's say the windshield of the car, so the force on this surface because of the air blowing across it is due to the pressure. It's a normal force. So pressure times the area delta A of this surface. This is delta A surface, and the direction will be minus n hat. So if n hat is the outward normal in this case, then the direction of this force is going to be opposite to the normal because the flow is going opposite to the normal direction. So that's minus n hat. That's a normal force. And the other kind of force that we have is the shear force. Okay, so this is because this is due to the shear stress. So if let's say you have the surface, let's say that's the front bonnet. So in this case the air is shearing and there is a shear stress that is created on the surface, that is the wall shear stress. So it's the flow shearing on the surface, and that is creating a shear stress on the surface. Okay, so this is given by the wall shear stress tau wall times the area on which it is acting. So let's call this delta A shear. We'll call delta A normal. There are two different areas and two different figures, so we'll call them. Right. So these are, I'm sorry, this is acting on the top surface. Okay, so these are the two kinds of forces that act, and in this case the force is actually along the direction of the flow. So we will let's call this S hat along the direction. So this is along S hat. Okay, so shear force will always act along the direction of the flow, and normal force will act opposite to the direction of the flow because it's going to well actually right. So these are the two kind of forces that are acting, and the focus of the discussion in this today's lecture or the next few lectures is to find out this shear force. Okay. And basically the focus is to find this wall shear stress on the solid surface. So I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I mean normal and shear both will act on the surface in the direction of the flow. So in this case normal force is also acting to the right, and the shear force is also acting to the right. The only difference is that in the surface orientation is different. So in normal case, the surface is oriented in such a way so that the direction is opposite to the normal, and in this case, the direction is 90 degrees to the normal. It's a shear stress. Right. So this shear stress is going to be the main aim of this discussion in this chapter. Just keep that in mind, because sometimes we get confused as to what is the real aim of doing all the discussion on boundary layers and separation and so on. So the whole idea is to talk about the shear stress in this chapter. There are many applications that we can think of when we're talking about these kind of forces on solid surfaces or external flows. It could be in aerodynamics. Air flowing across a solid body. Typical examples are flow of aeroplanes, automobiles, the movement or the flow of air across automobiles, and rockets and so on. The other is hydrodynamics. Okay, so in hydrodynamics we have flow of water. So in this case it could be submarines, it could be ships and so on. And the other applications are in other fields of engineering. Typically, they also have air or water flowing across them, but we don't consider them under the field of hydrodynamics or aerodynamics. And these could be the design of bridges. So if there's when you design a bridge, you have to consider the wind force, because that can be quite significant. And you saw that video of the Tahoma Bridge, that because of the wind it fractured. So we have to consider design the force of external force across these bridges. The other kind is the other example would be a flow across pipes. So if you have pipes going under the sea, then because of the movement of water, there could be forces. So that's not flow inside the pipe, but across it. Then it could be wires. So if you have wires, electrical wires, there is air that flows across them. It can get quite windy on certain days, and we have to consider for those forces as well. Otherwise, these wires may snap because of those forces, because these forces create tension in the wires. Right. So all these are examples of the applications of external flows. So the next topic in this discussion is going to be on boundary layers. Until now we have talked a lot about boundary layers in this course, but this is going to be more formal discussion on these boundary layers. Let's do a quick recap as to what boundary layers were. So if you have let's say a surface, the simplest surface you can think of is a flat surface. So we call it a flat plate in fluid mechanical discussions. So you have a flat plate and there is a flow that is happening, that is trying to shear provide some shear on the plate. This flow has got a uniform speed u, and as the flow passes over the plate, there is a boundary layer that develops. And the way we define this boundary layer is that on the surface of the plate there is a no slip condition. So the x velocity is what we're talking about. So the x velocity is 0, and as we move up, the x velocity increases until it reaches a point where the x velocity now becomes constant, which is equal to the uniform flow speed u. Okay. So since what we have shown here is that as we go from left to right, the boundary layer size increases, and that simply means, there's nothing like a physical boundary layer. It's just a hypothetical concept that this blue dashed line I've shown. So it simply means that the distance, the y distance, in which the y distance it takes for the velocity to go from 0 to u is increasing. Okay. So this is u as a function of y. in both cases. And this blue boundary layer, the size of the boundary layer at any distance is denoted by delta. Okay, so delta is the boundary layer thickness. Okay, and this delta, as we can see, is increasing as we go from left to right. So this delta is a function of x. So x is this coordinate and y is the normal coordinate. Right? In fact, there is a formal definition of delta. So delta is defined as the distance in which the flow x velocity goes from 0 So x velocity goes from 0 at y equal to 0 to u equal to capital U, or sorry, u equal to 0.99 times capital U at y equal to delta. Okay, so for any given x distance along the plate, so any distance x from the left, if you were to find the size of the boundary layer, then basically what you would do is you'll start with y equal to 0, you'll start going up until you reach that point where the where the u value has become equal to 99% of the the small u value has become equal to 99% of the free stream velocity capital U, and that is what we'll denote as the boundary layer thickness. Because theoretically you will never get a value which is equal to capital U, it will just keep increasing and tend towards it. Okay, that's the reason theoretically we define this as the boundary layer thickness. Right. So when you have a boundary layer developing over a solid body, we classify or we split the whole flow domain into two parts. One part is inside the boundary layer, and that part is denoted as the viscous flow region. Okay, we call it viscous flow region is because the effect of viscosity is prominent here. Okay, we can see that the u velocity or the x velocity is increasing from 0 to 0.99 times capital U. So there is a change that is visible in u, or we can say that there is a non-zero shear stress here inside the viscous flow region. Okay. Remember, shear stress is given as mu times du by dy. Okay, so the value of du by dy is finite inside the boundary layer, but if you go outside the boundary layer, then the flow velocity becomes almost constant. The u value becomes almost constant, so du by dy will become 0. So the shear stress will be 0 outside the boundary layer. So the region outside the boundary layer is denoted as the inviscid flow region. The viscous effects are not important outside, but inside the boundary layer the viscous effects are important. Okay, and the viscous effects being important is can be understood as the fact that the shear stress is non-zero. Okay, sometimes we get confused as to the viscosity of the fluid is the same inside and outside. Then why do we say that the viscous effects are important inside the boundary layer but not the outside? That's because that this du by dy is non-zero inside the boundary layer. Right. So these are the basic ideas of boundary layer. Now, even when we talked about pipes, for example, so when we had a discussion about flow inside pipes, that is internal flows, even then we had boundary layers because the flow was happening on a solid surface, which was just that the flow had solid surface on all sides of it. If we think of a 2D situation, then you have two flat plates, then the flow is surrounded by flat plates on both sides, top and bottom. So what happened was that the boundary layer started developing on both sides, and then they met at some point. So this, beyond this point where the two boundary layers met, was a complete viscous flow region. Okay. So that is the effect of viscosity is visible in the complete flow region. It was only in this initial developing flow region that there was some region where the flow was inviscid. Okay. Otherwise, in most of the pipe, and remember we considered that since this developing flow region is very small in length, we can in fact neglect it. So we didn't discuss much about this. We always talked about this region that exists, that's a developed flow region. Okay, but external flows will always have this split between the viscous flow region and the inviscid region, unlike internal flows. That is the reason it is discussed separately. The other idea I want to discuss is that as we increase the Reynolds number, the boundary layer thickness starts to decrease. Okay, it becomes extremely thin as the Reynolds number is increased. Okay, so let's discuss that. Okay, so the boundary layer thickness becomes extremely thin at high Reynolds number values, and in fact this is the idea that is used to split the flow into two parts and deal with the flow separately for the boundary layer region and the inviscid or the free stream region. We won't discuss that here, but I just want to make a point here that it is a technique that is used when the boundary layer is thin, that is at high Reynolds number on external flows. But does that mean that we can neglect the boundary layer if the Reynolds number is high? Okay, the answer is no, because if you neglect the Reynolds number, then where is the shear stress coming from? Okay, even though the boundary layer thickness is very thin, let's say at high Reynolds number, this is what we see. So this is the boundary layer region, and this is the free stream region. So if you neglect the boundary layer region, then the shear stress is cannot be figured out, because and in fact at high Reynolds number the boundary layer is the delta is smaller, the thickness of the boundary layer, and that means that your tau wall is higher. Okay, because tau wall is the rate of change of the velocity in the y direction. So if your thickness is small, then the flow has to go from 0 to the free stream velocity in a smaller distance. So that means that the slopes are going to be high. So tau wall is going to be high. So that's all the more reason not to neglect the boundary layer in the complete analysis. So it is important all the more when the Reynolds number increases and the boundary layer thickness becomes small. Okay, so don't neglect the boundary layer just because the Reynolds number is high and overall you see that it's very thin, the layer. And in fact, this estimation of delta, the boundary layer thickness, is going to tell us something about tau. Okay, the smaller the delta, the higher the wall shear stresses are going to be. So it's also important to figure out the delta thickness values. In fact, the other reason is because, as I said, that there's a flow analysis technique where you split the flow into two parts: the viscous flow region, the boundary layer region, and the outside the boundary layer region, that is the free stream region. So one has to figure out what part of the flow regime is in the viscous flow region. So for that you have to figure out the boundary layer thickness. So figuring out delta is also an important part of the problem. Not for figuring out the wall shear stress, because wall shear stress does not require you to find delta directly, but for the analysis of splitting the region into two parts, delta is important. So in this discussion, in this lecture, we'll also talk about finding the delta values for different flow situations. Wait, but I haven't told you how you define the Reynolds number. Okay, so Reynolds number, if you remember, was defined as rho times some velocity times some length times mu. So in this case, we define the Reynolds number based on the length x. Okay, so x is some distance from the edge of the plate. So if this is let's say some x, then the Reynolds number for this particular x will be Rex. Okay, so Reynolds number is dependent on the distance from the left edge of the plate, and the velocity that we use for defining Reynolds number is the free stream velocity u. Okay, so this is again how we define the Reynolds number. So that's in our control, and this Reynolds number we call the local Reynolds number. It's called local because it's based on a distance x which changes as you move around, rather than using some size which is dependent on the solid body size. So if you were to take this x equal to L, the complete plate thickness, or the complete plate length, so then you would call it Reynolds number based on the length L. So rho u L by mu. Okay. So this is how you define the local Reynolds number based on the changing x coordinate depending on how. So as you go from left to right, the Reynolds number will increase based on this definition. Now if you have a situation where for example there is an aerofoil, and the flow is happening like this. So in this case, how will we define our Reynolds number? Because there is no length. So what we do is we define x based on this curved coordinate x along the surface of the aerofoil shape. Okay, so that's the typical way you define Reynolds number in external flows. So this will become the x in the case of curved bodies. Right, so since we are defining Reynolds number based on this distance x, so that means, we have an intuition that as the Reynolds number increases, the flow starts transitioning towards turbulence. Okay, and that is exactly what we see here as well. So let us discuss the idea of transitioning to turbulence in this flow situation. Let me start a new page, it's easier. So again, let's say we have a flat plate and there is a flow, oncoming flow with a uniform speed u. So what we see is initially the boundary layer is laminar, but after some distance we start seeing that the boundary layer becomes turbulent. Okay, so what I mean by turbulent boundary layer is that the flow inside this region is turbulent, whereas the flow inside the laminar boundary layer was laminar. If you were to just look at it, you would see a very smooth flow in the laminar region, but in turbulent region it will all be very mixed and frothy. And of course I draw this zigzag kind of a line because this is the transition region. So in this case the delta, which is the boundary layer thickness as a function of x, is sometimes increasing, sometimes decreasing. So this transition region is a bit difficult to understand and it's not very stable. That's the reason we draw this kind of a jagged line. And this distance x at which the flow transitions towards turbulence is called the critical x. So we denote it as x critical. So the Reynolds number based on this x critical, that will be rho u x critical by mu is the critical Reynolds number. And what we see is, and what we have seen based on measurements, is that this is approximately equal to 3 into 10 to the power of 6. So as the Reynolds number crosses this point, it starts transitioning towards turbulent. Now this transition may happen before and after this as well, depending on how smooth the flow inlet conditions are. Sometimes if you have a lot of roughness on the plate surface, then you may see that the flow may transition to turbulence even before this Reynolds number of the critical Reynolds number. So this is just an average value based on lots and lots of experiments that have been conducted on plates, but this is for a typical smooth plate. Okay. Now what happens when the flow becomes turbulent? So is the behavior of the flow profile different in the turbulent boundary layer region as compared to the laminar boundary layer region? Let's see. So in the laminar boundary layer region, as we had shown earlier, so the flow profile is something like this. So it goes from 0 to u inside the boundary layer. In fact, turbulent boundary layer also, it goes from 0 to u. But as we discussed earlier, that in turbulent flows, there are a lot of fluctuations that start to appear. So because of this fluctuation, there is a lot of mixing, and this bulk mixing results in the mixing of momentum as well. So what we see is, there is a very sharp increase, and then the flow is almost uniform. Of course it is not. I mean, it increases and it reaches a value of 0.99 times u here. That is the reason we are defining a delta. So delta definition is the same for both turbulent and laminar regions. It is just that in this region there is a very sharp increase. In fact, as we discussed in the previous few lectures, that you have, I mean, if you zoom into it, then so you have this region, which is the laminar shear region, and then you have the overlap layer, and then you have the outer layer. Okay, so these three exist. I mean, the discussion we had earlier was in fact about boundary layers, turbulent boundary layers. We'll come to it again in a few lectures from today, but it's worth mentioning that the because of the bulk mixing that happens, the profile becomes much flatter in the boundary layer region as compared in the turbulent boundary layer region as compared to the laminar boundary layer region. This is much flatter, u as a function of y. Okay, so that means that the wall shear stresses in the turbulent boundary layers are higher, typically typically higher. I'll just say they're higher than tau wall laminar in most of the region. The reason I write most of the region is because if you talk about this region of laminar boundary layer in the beginning, there the flow has to go from 0. Let's say we're talking about this distance x, then the flow has to go from 0 to u in this smaller distance. So because of this, the shear stress may be quite high in this region as compared to the turbulent flow region, but it's only in the beginning of the laminar flow region. Beyond that, as the boundary layer thickness grows, the turbulent boundary layer shear stresses will always be higher than the laminar boundary layer. So we sometimes just generally say that the wall shear stresses in the turbulent flow region, boundary layer region, are much higher than the laminar flow regions. Right. So next is now that we've talked about boundary layers, I've told you the qualitative behavior of the flow inside boundary layers. Now is the time to figure out a way to solve, I mean, either theoretically or experimentally figure it out, the u profile as a function of y. Okay, because if you can get this u profile, then you can get del u by del y, and from this you can calculate wall shear stress, because that is equal to mu times del u by del y. So this awareness of the flow profile inside the boundary layer is what is required, that too just above the wall. Okay. Now, as we discussed earlier, that for laminar situations, theoretical solution is possible, and we do that. I mean, we use the theoretical ideas. For the turbulent flow regime or the turbulent boundary layer region, it is difficult to use the theoretical ideas because of the challenges we already have discussed in the turbulent flow lecture. So for that situation, we have to go back to empirical data or the experimental data. Okay, so we'll start with the laminar flow discussions, because it's always good to start with the theory to get some understanding of how the theory is used, and that again also becomes some sort of a motivation for the turbulent discussions later. Okay. We'll just say that theoretical discussion. Now, what we'll do is we'll use both kind of ideas, the integral flow ideas where we draw a control volume and try to figure out some average quantity, and we'll also try, or we'll also use the differential flow ideas. Where we solve for the flow parameters in the complete flow region. So we solve for the flow velocity or pressure in the complete flow region. We'll use both of them. So let us start with the first one, which is the integral analysis. Okay, so this we'll denote as A in this current lecture. Right, so let's draw the plate picture again. We'll use capital L for the length of the plate. In this case, the incoming flow is uniform, as we discussed earlier, so we'll use capital U as earlier. To denote the incoming flow in this case. Now, we have to figure out, I mean, what are we trying to do here? Okay, so in this case, we want to find out the drag force. That is what the aim has been, as we discussed in the beginning. We want to find the shear drag or the shear force. So for that, it makes sense to consider a control volume that goes on the surface, just above the surface at y equal to 0. So that is equal to the surface. So this is the control volume we'll consider, and then we'll consider this part, and then straight up from here. And there's a strong urge to simply there's a strong urge to have this choose this control volume as a rectangle. But remember, the reason we are choosing a control volume is then because we'll want to apply the Reynolds transport theorem. And in the transport theorem, we have this integral. If you remember, in the transport theorem, we'll get this integral terms over the control surface. And then since we're talking about the forces, so we'll have our beta will be equal to u. And we'll have a term v dot n. So if I talk about the top surface, then the v dot n will not be 0 here, because this top surface is not along a streamline. So remember when we used to apply this analysis, and if we are considering a control volume surface, that is a control surface, along a streamline, then our life becomes very easy because v dot n along a streamline is 0. But this is not a streamline. The streamline actually will be slightly tilted up. So if if my aim is to align the flow in such a way, I'm not drawing the boundary layer very well. So if my aim was to align this top surface in such a way so that it is a streamline, then it will look something like this. All right. So this red one is now my control volume. So it's tilted up. So the top control surface is tilted up. Okay, and the reason behind this is we can try to understand that from two ideas. One is from the idea of the streamlines and the relation between the stream function and the volume flow rate. Okay, so let's see how the flow profile looks at the entrance. So at the entrance, the flow is uniform. Okay, the boundary layer thickness is 0, so the flow is uniform. But at this point where the flow is exiting the control volume, if I draw the flow profile, it will look let me draw it just to the left of it. So my flow profile is going to go from 0 to capital U in this distance of x, delta x, or just call it delta. Okay, so if I was to think of the volume conservation, then if this is my psi2 value and this is my psi1 value, because one of the streamlines is just along the surface, so psi2 minus psi1 is going to give me the volume flow rate. Okay, on the right hand side also we need to equate this because if we have drawn a streamline on the top, then that means that the value here is also equal to psi2 and the value here is equal to psi1. So the flow rate again in this case is psi2 minus psi1. So why is it that on the right hand side our psi2 has to be higher? I mean the streamline has to be higher, and the reason is because look at the flow profile. It is not uniform anymore. It has there is some deficit here, flow deficit. To compensate for that, you need a larger distance. Basically, I'm talking about integral. The flow rate is given as the integral of u times dA. So you have to equate this to capital U times just call it dy, because the width of the plate is assumed to be b everywhere. So width we'll take as b. Okay, that's a constant width. So this is b times u dy, and this is b times capital U times the um, let's call this we'll call this h. This times h. This integral is from 0 to delta. Okay, so you can see that for this flow rate to be the same, you will need a longer distance. So this delta has to be, so this will imply that your delta has to be greater than h. Only then these integrals can be equal, because there is a deficit in the flow here. Okay, so this is one way to get a feel for this. The top surface is slightly tilted up. The other way to get a feel for this is, if you see the boundary layer region, then in the boundary layer region the continuity equation is still satisfied. Okay, and that's the mass conservation equation, and we are considering incompressible flow situation here. So this means that del V by del Y is going to be negative of del U by del X. Now del U by del X is not 0. Okay, in fact it is negative, and we can get a feel from that from the idea. I mean, I just told you that the boundary layer thickness is increasing as we go from left to right. So if the thickness is increasing, and that means that if I was to take a point here and a point here, which was, let's say, on this section 1, it was the center of the profile here. So the flow velocity would be something here, but on the right hand side at section 2, the profile the delta is now very high. So that means the flow velocity would not have reached the same value that it reached here. It would be something less than that, because it still is increasing and it has to go to u in that longer distance. Because that means that this value is going to be less than this value on the left. So this del u by del x is going to be negative. So that means del v by del y is going to be positive. And that basically means that v is positive inside boundary layer. And because v is 0 on the surface and del v by del y is positive, so that means as you go up, v increases. Because that means that there is, v is positive, so that means the flow is not along the x direction, it is tilted like this. And that is exactly what we see on the surface of the boundary layer. So if you see at this point on the edge, then the flow vector will not be horizontal, it will be tilted slightly. So if you think about that, then if the flow is tilted, so that means that the streamline is going to be tilted up slightly. This is just ways to get a feeling for that. So we'll come back to the main idea. So we want to use the Reynolds transport theorem now on this rate control volume. So let's apply the Reynolds transport theorem. So we get the summation of the forces in x direction. So we'll only apply it for the x direction forces, which is equal to the drag force, okay, or in fact minus the drag force. Okay. Because the drag is acting on the fluid to the left, and this is equal to the integral along the control surface of rho can be taken out because it's a constant, x velocity v dot n times dA. Okay, all of the terms are 0, and you can figure that out yourself. And the transient term is 0, and this can be written as the integral. Now I'll use, so this is 1, this is 2, this is 2, and this is 3, and this is 4. So I've labeled the surfaces. So this will simply become a sum over the surfaces 1 and 3. Okay, because on 2 and 4 our v dot n is going to be 0. Okay, so if that is the case, then the integral will be 0 on this bottom and top surface. So that was the reason we had to choose a streamline on the top, right? Okay, so let's simplify this. So if I was to put in the values, because the integral on 1 is from y equal to 0 to y equal to h, and the integral on 3 is from y equal to 0 to y equal to delta. Okay. So this will give us the drag d. I'm just, not doing all the algebra here, you can do it yourself. Okay, so this is what the drag will come out to be. We still have an integral that has to be evaluated because it's from 0 to delta, but delta is something we do not know. Okay, so that's the best we can do at this point. And remember this this is actually on the ul. Okay, u actually is a function of both x and y. So in this case, u is a function of x and y inside the boundary layer. Okay, so what that means is on this right hand side wall 3, we've got x equal to L. Okay, so we denote that as L here. Alright. So that is the expression for the drag force from the Reynolds transport theorem. That's using the integral analysis. There is something more we can do because there is some relation between this h and this delta. Remember, h and delta are related through the idea of this streamline, the top streamline here. Okay, we had started with the delta size in the right wall and we had traced back the streamline and we got this height h. Okay, so there should be some relation, and of course the relation is there from the volume conservation. So I'll say h and delta at L are related. So we can use volume conservation. So what that means is, let's go up a bit. So the volume in this part is equal to the volume flow rate in this part. Okay. That was because it's a streamline. So psi2 minus psi1 has to be 0, has to be the same on both sides. So what that means is, on the left hand side it's a uniform profile. So it's simply area times velocities. The velocity is u and the area is the plate width b times the height h. The height h of the left hand side, height of the control volume. On the right hand side it has to be integral. The integral is from 0 to delta, and then we're talking about small u at distance L is a function of y times dy, and then of course the width b is still there. So from this relation we can relate our h and delta. Okay, so this I'll call 2. So now using 1 and 2, so 1 was this relation for the drag. What we'll get is the expression for drag. Okay, this time we won't have an h. Okay, in fact, let's not put L here because now we have generalized this. We have put delta as a function of x. If it was L, I would have put delta at L. So this is some general u that we're talking about, and this is, we can say, at x equal at some x. Okay. But for this case you can put x equal to L for this whole expression. Okay, so this is the expression for drag on the plate. Okay, so what you can see is it has density, the plate width, it has the boundary layer thickness delta, which at this stage is unknown. We still haven't got any relation for delta. It depends on u. Again, u profile is not known. capital U is known because capital U is the free stream velocity, and the length of the plate is known. Okay, so there are two things which are required, which are the size, the thickness of the boundary layer, and the velocity profile small u. So without these, we cannot proceed any further. So this expression for the drag D was given by von Karman. Okay, the same von Karman who gave the vortex, alternate vortex shading that we talked about earlier. Okay. Right. So at this stage, let's talk about another idea that is called the momentum thickness. Okay, so this is the velocity profile, let's say we have at any x value. So this so the velocity u goes from 0 to capital U in this distance delta. Now if I was to approximate this, I mean not approximate, if the flow velocity was uniform, then it will look something like this. Okay, but that is not the case. In this case, the flow velocity is not uniform. It is actually going from 0 to capital U. Now if I try to write the if I say that the momentum, if I try to find out the momentum flux, okay, so if there was no boundary layer, then the flux would have been that is this case number 2. So the momentum flux would be rho times u times the area, which is delta times the plate thickness b. Okay, the reason I have two u's is because one of the u's is for the momentum and the other is we're talking about flux, so that v dot n term. In this case, the momentum is transporting the momentum itself. If you're talking about the flux of something else, then we'll have only one u and the other u will be replaced by the quantity that we're talking about. So when we talk about momentum flux, we have two u's. We discussed this earlier in the integral analysis. Right. So this is what we would have, but with boundary layer, that is case number 1, we get rho times, and there is an integral from 0 to delta small u times small u times delta times b. So what we see is there is a deficit of momentum between 1 and 2. You can think in terms of the areas. So in the area, the blue area is missing if I compare it with number 2, right? So what that means is, the reason I'm discussing all this is because I want to talk about, I want to define something called deficit of momentum. Okay. So there is a momentum deficit, which is the blue shaded region. Okay, we're talking about momentum. Just don't consider the area, it's the momentum we're talking about. So this deficit is equal to integral 0 to delta, and now this time the deficit is capital U minus u. So that is a deficit in momentum, and that is transported still by the flow u. So this u is what is giving us that v dot n, it's coming from v dot n, and this part is because we're talking about the transport of deficit. This is the deficit in velocity. So this gives us the momentum deficit here, and there's a b that we'll take out. Yes, a lot of times we talk about momentum deficit. So this is exactly what is meant by momentum deficit. Okay, so if I was to compare this momentum deficit with this number 2, then what I'll see is that there will be, I mean, if I was to take some portion out from here in terms of the momentum it carries, the momentum flux it carries, and it was equal to this, then I could have equated the actual momentum in this shaded region with this uniform flow momentum. Okay, so if I was to approximate this as uniform profile momentum that is being carried, I'll have to take out this shaded region. Okay, and this thickness, let's say, is denoted by theta. So this theta is called the momentum thickness. So basically what that boils down it to is, right, so if my flow was uniform, then the amount of momentum flux we'll have in this theta, so that will be rho times capital U squared times theta times b, and that will be equal to, because I said this shaded region here has to be equal to shaded region here, because we are simply talking about the deficit being equal to that extra theta that is missing. So this would have been equal to rho b integral u times the deficit in velocity times dy. Okay, so this is gives us the definition of theta, the momentum thickness. Many times people get confused as to what this momentum thickness actually means. I mean, using equations is clear, but one has to have some sort of a feeling for this as well, because we keep talking about this term, and that is what von Karman talked about in his 1921 discussion. Right. So the reason we're talking about momentum thickness is because now we can write the drag force D as simply rho times u square, we'll have a b as well, times theta. Okay. If you are confused, then let's go back to this relation. So what did we have here? We had rho times b, and then we had this integral. Now this integral 0 to delta small u times capital U minus small u is nothing but this integral here in the deficit, the momentum flux deficit. Not the momentum deficit, the momentum flux deficit. So that was the whole idea of defining this momentum thickness theta. Okay, now we can simply write the drag as this, and then theta can be written separately as using this relation, right? So this, I mean, these are functions of x. So d is a function of x and theta is a function of x. So if you are talking about, I mean, if you increase your x, then you're talking about the drag force acting for that plate length that we're talking about in this case. So if you put x equal to L, then you get the whole plate length L. So that's a total drag. Okay, so let's label this. Let's what numbers we had till number 2. So we'll call this number 3. Right. And we also know drag from the idea of shear stress. Okay, so we know that drag as a function of x is the wall shear stress tau times the area. So this again shear stress is at x, and the area of the plate is b times x. Okay, sorry, this shear stress changes with x, so I made a mistake. So if you're talking about a plate and we're talking about some general x distance here, then the tau ball will change from left to right because the boundary layer thickness is changing. So the slope will change. If the slope changes, then the tau ball also changes. Okay, the slope here is changing. So it's stronger here, gentler here, much gentler here. So shear stress is decreasing as you go from left to right. Okay, so to find the drag force, we have to integrate tau wall times the area. So the area is the plate width B times dx, and this is integrated from 0 to some x that we are considering distance. Don't get confused. I mean, this you can call it x tilde, just to make sure that they're different. So this we'll call 4. So what we have done is basically from here we have got the drag expression in terms of the momentum thickness, which is nothing but in terms of the integrals of the deficit in momentum we get from left to right. Because ultimately, if you think about it, because of the shear stresses, we get a velocity profile, and that profile is resulting in a deficit of momentum. If for some reason there was no shear stress at all, then you will not get any deficit, and there will be no force because of shear at all. Okay, so that deficit, that this integral here is linked to the shear stress, and that is what we are going to do now. Use 3 and 4 and relate theta and tau wall. That is what we are trying to head towards. So how can we do that? I mean, we can differentiate 4, that is easier, because tau wall is stuck inside an integral. So if I differentiate 4, then I get d times drag by dx, and that is equal to tau wall as a function of x times b. This I will call 5, and then I can also differentiate 3. That gives us d capital D by dx, and that is equal to rho b u square d theta by dx, that is 6. Okay, so from 5 and 6 we can get the relation, so we can equate dd by dx and dd by dx. So what we get is tau wall, which is a function of x, is rho u square d theta by dx. Right, and this expression is general. I mean, this is true for both laminar and turbulent flows. Right. Now there is nothing else we can do unless until we either decide whether we want to work with laminar flows or turbulent flows. So let's say we are working with laminar flows. So what von Karman did is that he assumed that let the flow velocity profile be parabolic. Now don't confuse this parabolic profile with what you get in a pipe. So in a pipe the profile is parabolic from the solution of the Navier-Stokes equations. Here we simply have assumed the flow profile to be parabolic. It's not inside a pipe, so there is no reason that we should get a parabolic profile. So this is just an assumption based on what we have, what he had measured. It decently fitted a parabolic profile. Okay, so we're talking about this this profile. Okay, so this u as a function of y, a parabola was used. So basically we're talking about this kind of a parabola. Okay. And since the boundary layer thickness is increasing as you go from left to right, so it's easier, since we are trying to write the flow profile for different x's Okay, so they should be valid. So rather than using y, it's easier to use y by delta. Okay, so use y by delta as the independent coordinate. Okay, so at the plate surface, the y by delta value will be equal to 0 because y is 0, and on the edge of the boundary layer on the top, your y by delta will be equal to 1 because y is equal to delta. Okay, so using this, von Karman, what he got was u is a function of x and y. It was given as parabolic, so 2 times y by delta minus y by delta squared. So this is parabolic in y by delta. We can check. So at y equal to 0, this becomes 0 because it's u times 0 minus 0, and at y equal to delta, this becomes 2 times 1 minus 1, which is 1 times u. So this becomes capital U. Okay, so this works. So this is a parabolic profile and it satisfies both boundary conditions in y equal to 0 and y equal to delta. So this profile was proposed by von Karman for proceeding further. Okay, and this is for y between 0 and delta is a function of x. Okay, right, so using this, now we can easily find theta, because theta, if you remember, was 0 to delta, small u times capital U minus small u. Let's go up and check. So our theta was actually this here. So if you divide both sides by rho b, so this rho b will cancel, and if you take this capital U square on the right hand side, we actually get small u by capital U, and then we have 1 minus small u by capital U. Okay, so this is what theta is, and if you solve for it using your small u as what's given here, then this will come out to be approximately 2 by 15 times delta. It is in terms of delta. Okay, you can't get rid of delta here because you're integrating from 0 to delta. If you integrate in a different range, you'll get a different value. Right, and then the wall shear stress, which is mu times del u by del y at y equal to 0, will come out to be approximately 2 times mu capital U by delta. Right, so we have found both tau wall and theta, and if I go up and show you this relation that we had, number 7 was a relation between tau wall and d theta by dx. So what I can do is I can substitute my tau wall and theta expressions here. I'll have to differentiate my theta in terms of x, and what that will give me is a relation an equation for solving for delta. Let's see. So on the left hand side of 7, I had a tau wall. So tau wall is simply 2 mu u by delta. On the right hand side, I had rho u square d theta by dx. Rho u square, and d theta by dx is simply 2 by 15 d delta by dx. Now delta is a function of x, that we know because the boundary layer thickness is increasing as you go from left to right. Okay. So this equation, this can be made an equation in delta. So one of the u's will get cancelled, then the 2 gets cancelled. So what we have is mu upon rho u times 15 dx. On the right hand side we have delta times d delta. Okay, so now we can integrate this, and what we are integrating from is again we are talking about the boundary layer. So this is solving for delta. Okay, so x goes from 0 to some distance, general distance x. Okay, now again I am using x both inside and outside, but you understand that this is something like x tilde, and my delta on the left edge, the delta value is 0. So at x equal to 0, my delta is equal to 0, and at x equal to some general x value, this is some delta as a function of x. So again you can think of this as some tilde. just for the mathematical understanding. Right, so we solve this, and I'll simply give you the final answer. So delta by x from the solution will give us 5.5 divided by square root of Reynolds number based on x. So this is what we get from von Karman analysis by assuming a parabolic profile for laminar flow situation. Okay, so this is an expression for finding the boundary layer thickness delta. We already had assumed that the flow profile is parabolic, so we could easily have found out. I mean, we actually found out shear stress tau wall. So the drag force can be calculated from this, but we also got an expression for the boundary layer thickness. And as I said, that this thickness is also important parameter that is required in the whole idea of boundary layer analysis to find out what thickness of the flow is actually in the viscous flow regime. Right. We also define something called a skin friction coefficient CF. Okay. So this is simply non-dimensionalizing the wall shear stress. So we divide wall shear stress by half rho u square, and that gives us a non-dimensional coefficient which we call the skin friction coefficient. So this is similar or analogous to the Darcy friction factor F that you had in pipes. Okay, so rather than talking about dimensional quantities, we talk about skin friction coefficient that helps us compare two different or many different flow situations. Okay, so again, tau wall we could have found out. So for this, the skin friction coefficient is 0.73 divided by the square root of Reynolds number. So again, this tells us that if you take a longer or a longer pipe section, plate section, if the x value is high, then your skin friction will become smaller because the Reynolds number will increase, and then that will result in the skin friction being smaller. That's the total skin friction coefficient we're talking about. Okay. Okay. I'm sorry, I made a mistake here. So what is basically what I mean is, so if I take two different x values, x1 and x2, two different distances from the edge of the plate, this is x equal to 0. So rather than talking about the shear stress values at, this is tau wall 1 and tau wall 2, we talk about the skin friction coefficient. So as the Reynolds number increases, that is as we go from left to right in this plate, then the skin friction coefficient will decrease because the tau wall will also decrease, because remember in the laminar regime the boundary layer thickness is increasing. So on the right hand side the flow gets a longer distance, so this slope is going to be much gentler than what we have here. Okay. So that is the reason the CF value is decreasing as the x value increases or the Reynolds number based on x increases. Right. I also want to talk about one more idea before moving on to the next subtopic. So if this delta by x is less than 0.1, okay, so if it gives us some sense of the thickness of the boundary layer. So if delta by x is less than 0.1, so I'm not just talking about the thickness by itself, I'm talking about a ratio of this thickness to the length, then we say that the boundary layer is thin. Okay. We simply don't call a boundary layer thin based on delta, it's the ratio of the delta to the length of the plate or the length of the section we are talking about. Okay, and only under these conditions we can consider as I said that the flow is split into two parts. So in this situation we can split our flow analysis into two parts. Okay, so one part is the boundary layer region flow, The other part is called the inviscid flow region, and we also call it sometimes as potential flow region. Okay, the same potential flow that we talked about earlier, saying that if the flow is irrotational, then the curl of velocity is 0 and we can define a velocity potential phi. And again, inviscid flow, that means that there's no viscosity, so nothing to result in rotations, so the flow is inviscid. There are some conditions where that is not the case, if the incoming flow has some rotation in it. Otherwise, if everything else is satisfied, then we can split it into two parts. And that is again if the boundary layer is thin. If the boundary layer is not thin, then we cannot do this. Okay, I will not discuss it further why we can't do this. I just mention it that it is not possible if delta by x is greater than 0.1. Okay, so this has to be important for us to do this analysis of splitting the flow into two parts. It does not affect anything in this discussion in this chapter, but a general analysis of flow becomes difficult. Okay. And another benefit of splitting our flow into two parts is that what we do is, since we are talking about the boundary layer as being thin, so you can call it like this, or you can think of it like this. So there is this potential flow region, and this is the boundary layer region. Okay, so in the potential flow region, you can find out the pressure as a function of x. The pressure varies as you go from left to right, and in the boundary layer region, we can simply use this p as a function of x. Okay, because we say that it is so thin, and we will show it in the next lecture. We can say that this pressure variation with y is almost 0. So that means whatever pressure is outside the boundary layer at any given x is the same as what is inside the boundary layer. So this idea can be used again only if the boundary layer is thin. If the boundary layer is not thin, then all this using information from the potential flow region and bringing it into the boundary layer for pressure, that fails. Okay, so then again our life becomes difficult. We will discuss this again in the next lecture. And also, the information for pressure is required for calculating the normal force, because ultimately it's all about calculating the total drag. So for calculating the normal force, one has to use pressure. So if this boundary layer is thin, then we can use the pressure from the outside or the inviscid or the potential flow region and bring it inside the boundary layer. Right. Now, it's a very similar idea, it's just a term. Like momentum thickness, we have something called displacement thickness. Okay, so let's quickly draw that figure of plate and a boundary layer above it. Okay, so on the left hand side we have a uniform flow profile, that is the incoming flow, and the right hand side I have shown for one for some x value we have variation of velocity as a function of y at a given x value. Now, as we discussed earlier, that we will have if I was to draw a streamline, then it will be, I'm exaggerating a bit, but it will be something like this. This is the streamline, slightly tilted to the top as we go from left to right. Okay, and we said that the reason, one of the ways to understand this was the volume flow rate, because it's streamlined. So the volume flow rate has to be the same below this streamline at any distance x. So if we take these two extremes, then what we get is the integral, I can simply say u times, sorry, I can simply say capital U, and this distance we called h, this distance. So capital U times h times the plate thickness B, well, times rho. So that's the volume flow rate on the left hand side. On the right hand side, the volume flow rate integral is an integral from 0 to delta, which is a function of x, and then small u, which is a function of y, times dy. Okay, and these are equal. That's saying that the volume flow rate q is equal to these two. Right. So again, using the same idea as momentum thickness, if I was to basically what I am doing here, well, I can draw it here. So let's look at this integral. So this is simply an integral of this profile, okay, from 0 to delta. So this is delta. If I was to approximate this as a uniform flow which was equal to u, then I'll have to take out some part, right, and this part will be the same as what this part is. So these blue parts are the same. Okay, that is what will then result in the non-shaded parts in the two figures being equal. Okay, so what that means is if this, I mean, I've drawn the figure that this is delta and this part was h. If you remember, you can actually see that from here. I mean, this is h, and this whole thing is delta, and that extra part that we have here is what we call as delta star. Okay, so this h times u is giving us the volume flow rate, and here it's the complete integral of this parabola of this profile that we have here. Okay. So you can either think of it as geometrically, or you can put in the relations mathematically. So what you will ultimately get is this delta star is an integral from 0 to delta, and then 1 minus, well, it's actually the momentum deficit, and then you have a u here. Okay. So this u times delta star is this shaded region, and this capital U minus small u is giving us this shaded region on the left hand side. Right. So this gives us a definition of delta star, and this delta star is called displacement thickness. So we will be using this term delta star in the expressions that we will be developing later. So it's worth defining this displacement thickness. So the whole motivation is simply I mean, if we were to approximate this as a uniform velocity profile, then how much of a distance we will have to remove to ensure that the volume flow rates were equal. Okay, and for the laminar flow analysis that we just did, that is assuming parabolic u is a function of y, we will get our delta star as 1/3 of our boundary layer thickness delta. Okay, so they are both functions of x. All right, and we can in fact write delta star in terms of the Reynolds number. Well, delta star divided by x, and this comes out to be 1.83 divided by the square root of local Reynolds number Rex. Right? Okay. So we'll stop the discussion here today because we have now got a decent understanding of how to use the integral analysis for calculating different terms such as the boundary layer thickness, the momentum thickness and the displacement thickness. And of course, in this case we assume that the flow velocity profile was parabolic, and that was just an assumption. That is what von Karman assumed in 1921 because there was no way to find out the velocity profile. In the next lecture we will go to the differential analysis and we'll actually solve the equations and solve for the actual velocity profile, which is close to parabolic but not exactly parabolic, and we'll see what sort of relations we get for these expressions, which are delta star, the displacement thickness, and delta, which is the momentum, which is the boundary layer thickness, and of course the velocity profile. So we'll compare that with von Karman's analysis, which was based on assuming a parabolic velocity profile. Okay, so I'll stop here and I'll see you in the next lecture. Thank you.